You should remember that old comb to do this. Should be using antibiotics. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
Just have to watch where all my stuff goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, hive tools is back.
I have tools. Yeah, I find them all over the place. Okay, but so to me, I see parallels because we began working on mite disease resistance. It wasn't that bad. It took a few years. And practicing moving some comb through the brood nest so they stay in relatively new comb. Bees in the wild eventually abandon an old comb, and they'll either wall it off with propolis and let the wax moths eat it, or they'll abscond and let the wax moths eat their whole nest and move back in, or a swarm move in. So bees use the wax moths. Wax moths serve as have a purpose. They're not our enemies. And we make enemies. We make them because we fear them, basically. If we fear them, then we hate them, then we have to kill them, right? And they're just misunderstood. We have to be in it. We have to live with them. Now that Mite came, understandably, it made it an enemy because it killed hundreds of thousands of beehives. When it first came, the mite resistance in the United States and Europe was maybe 1 in 20,000. So most beehives died completely. And in those days, it was common for bee scientists, and nobody wants to claim who started the quote, but they said, breeding bees that are mite resistant is like breeding lambs that are resistant to wolves' teeth. It can't be done. The mite is just too destructive. They even named it Varroa destructor, right? It was Varroa jacobsonii, and they named the variety we have in the United States Varroa destructor. And I was determined that I would try to breed for mite resistance, and I had 200 initially Langstroth hives, 250. I started losing bees and losing bees. I got down to 100, but I guess you could say I got back up. I went below 100 and got back up, and I thought, oh, I'm making progress. And then one year, I went from 100 to 2. And I was like, oh, this is not working. This is really not working. I don't know what to do. And my family was partially dependent on our honey income and our beeswax for our income. So it was getting real serious, right? And what I did is I went and built 30 little top-bar hives. They cost me, in those days, about $10. I had been experimenting with top-bar hives for about 15 years at that point, but I had my honey production hives were all Langstroths. I thought, I'm gonna they're so cheap, and they're so easy, and they make honey. So I thought I'd make 30 top-bar hives for $300, $10 each, and put bees in them, and see if if we have a good year. We did have a good year. At the end of that year, I thought, I had about $6,000 from the bees. And I thought, well, I can buy new Langstroth equipment because my old equipment is really getting cracked and worn out. But why would I do that? Because I just made $6,000 with 300. And now I'm going to spend thousands on boxes. So I built more top-bar hives because they're just so much cheaper. And I never looked back. I just eventually got to about 200 top-bar hives. I pollinated almonds. Excuse me. I pollinated almonds with top-bar hives in California. I made a lot of beeswax, a lot of honey. The business took off, and my expenses went down. But the Varroa mite I'll stick to that because I wander. But what to do about the varroa mite? So I went to a meeting in Colorado. I came up with some methods that really worked. One method was to cage the queen in the summer. I would just put her in a cage, leave her right in the hive where she had been, but I would prevent her from laying eggs for 10 days. Then I would release her. But that would put a pulse in the brood nest. But there was no brood, the right age. Varroa infest 8-day-old bee larvae. So if there's no 8-day-old bee larvae, they've got nowhere to lay their eggs. So they have to wait on the adult bees until there's some 8-day-old bee larvae. So when you stop the queen from laying eggs, then in 8 days there'll be nowhere for the varroa mites to go. And then the mites, the bees will spin their cocoon and have to come out as an adult bee. And then 8 days after they come out, now there's a place for the varroa mites to lay their eggs. But that makes about a 17-day break where there's no place. I figured at the end of that 17th day, I discovered that cedar bark, which we call juniper bark in New Mexico, the smoke of cedar bark kills mites. It doesn't seem to affect the bees very much. So I used that, and it worked. I don't use it anymore. I don't do anything anymore. I don't really concern myself much about varroa mite anymore. But that did work. Went to a meeting in Colorado Springs, national meeting. At that time, the only approved miticide was Epistem, and everybody in the meeting was seeing, oh shoot, the Epistem saved our bacon. It really works. The mites are finally under control, because it was pretty scary. And it's not just scary to the beekeepers, because they're pollinating almonds, apples, peaches, plums, cherries, cranberries, blueberries, melons, watermelons. They're making seed to grow carrots. So when you go and Nan's carrot, they contract with the beekeeper, and the beekeeper brings bees to a holding yard where they have cleared all the wild carrot pollen producing plants for several miles in all directions, because they don't want any wild carrot pollen on your bees when their carrots come into seed. They're very precise about the mixing of pollen to make the carrots that we depend on so much. So honeybees, for the seed industry, like even alfalfa seed, honeybees pollinate the alfalfa to make alfalfa seed. So it's scary for all of us if the bee industry goes down. We run out of food, healthy food. So at that meeting, I was looking for somebody who would be interested in raising bees that were varroa mite resistant. And I wasn't finding much luck. And then a man named Thomas Render, Dr. Thomas Render, Baton Rouge Bee Lab, entomologist, he was saying that we should look in southeastern Russia, where Apis mellifera and Apis cerana overlap, because Apis mellifera was exposed to the varroa mite thousands of years ago there, and that would be a good place to look for varroa resistance. And he was not getting very much interest, but I was interested. Mexico beekeepers helped him, a little bit with money for his research. But he finally got to do it, and he did indeed begin. He brought the Russian bees that form the beginning of a real basis to find bees that can resist the mites. So let me present this. And I asked this, can honeybees live without us? So there are people that believe that they cannot, that all the wild bees in the world are bees that haven't died yet, that swarmed from our bees that we protected with our poison. I call miticides poison. I'll try to call it miticide. Miticide, technically it's an acaricide, but it's a poison, right? And all the poisons that kill the mites are not good for the bees. Like, they have an LD50. If you increase the dosage, you kill the bees. And what we found is that in many cases, at below the LD50, you don't kill the bees, but you do brain damage, you do intestinal damage, it reduces longevity considerably, you lose queen fertility, you reduce drone longevity to below sexual maturity. So now you've got drones that don't live long enough to mate. Well, they're worthless. So can honeybees live without us? And the answer is, of course, yes. And I'll get to that. So when the mites first came to me in New Mexico, I heard they were coming. Finally, a neighbor 3 miles away said, "Have they studied the red things crawling all over my bees?" So I went and looked, and oh shit, that's where I'm mite. And then my bees got it. And when they first came, you could see a few mites, and all of a sudden you would see 5 and 6 mites on every bee. They would literally just be crawling with mites, just give you kind of the shivers. And then you'd see an empty beehive. The bees would have just gone and died. And they're gone. And so then we went through a list. We started with Ibistan. Mites got resistant to it. We allowed an emergency exemption of coumaphos, organophosphate. We had to promise to dispose of the strips as if they were hazardous material. But nobody knew how to do that. Turns out when I got somebody to come and speak to one of our meetings in New Mexico, the guy said, "We put it in a hazardous proof barrel and send it to Phoenix where they incinerate it." That's a great solution, right? They're going to incinerate it in Phoenix. Well, that's ridiculous. No beekeepers, that's not what any beekeeper I knew did. Well, you couldn't afford to do it. It was ridiculous. Anyway, mites got resistant to it, so it didn't matter. And on, Apivar, formic, and oxalic acid. I tried formic acid. For a while, I got a little bit in my eye. It's not, and it may be, it has organic, it is in bee venom, slightly, it's in ant venom, a little bit more, but not the concentration that will kill your mites. And it's really hard on the bees' eyes, and essentially on their trachea, their breathing tubes. So none of these are perfect. We operate with this perspective because we're afraid the mites are going to kill our bees. We hate the mites, and then we want to kill the mites. There are places, not why this works intermittently. There are places in the world that I've been where they couldn't get miticides. There were beekeepers, fairly, keeping in stone beehives in Mexico, and simple wooden or hollow logs in Azerbaijan, and they could not get miticides. What they noticed was they would have their bees go along pretty good, the mice came, bees all but disappeared, but a few survived. If about 4 or 5 years later, they started to come back. 8 years from when they went down, they were about back to normal, back the way they were. And they weren't doing anything with any miticides. And so there's an indication that they had let it go, survival of the fittest, and eventually it took time, but the bees found ways to resist the mites and to live. They still have mites. Almost every beehive in the world today has varroa mites. Still spreading to Australia, but most of the world. If we look carefully in any of your beehives, we can find a mite if we look carefully enough. Of course, we've been accused that if we don't do anything, the bees are going to die. They're going to get robbed out. There's some scenes of robbing. One case, the hornets have decided to help out with the robbing. The idea is then they'll get the mites and take it back to their hives, and they're forming a mite bomb. We're destroying out the bees for all of us. Okay, some of this I kind of threw together. I'm not going to read all this, but our results demonstrate that varroa-resistant honeybees present a strong potential for reducing colony losses in commercial beekeeping. But then the problem is we can develop bees that are mite resistant on a small scale. But we need in America to transition that into the commercial beekeepers. I used to work for a man with 10,000 hives, excuse me, 4,000 hives. I worked with somebody with 10,000 as a pollination broker. You have to bring the bees, receive the bees, send them to the orchards in California. But I had 4,000, worked with a man with 4,000 hives. They have a different, it's harder for them to convert all their bees into mite-resistant bees. And what he's saying here is that eventually, some are data suggest that the varroa-centric control strategy, incorporating the adoption of resistant stock, currently represents the most effective sustainable technology to the solution for the honeybee losses. That's a picture of a bee biting a mite. I have it, if you look up that, they did a video, and they put the mite there, and one of the bees kind of looked at it, and the other bee saw it, ran over and bit it, and killed it. Turns out that when the bee bites a mite or a waxworm larvae, there's wax moths and beetle larvae in every beehive all the time. And they get away with hiding in the corners. As soon as they come out in the open, the bees bite them and it kills them. Turns out that the bee doesn't just cause a wound that means they bleed out. Turns out that there is 2 heptanone in bee saliva. And when they bite the mite or the wax moth or the beetle larvae, that chemical is it causes paralysis in the mites. It paralyzes the mite. And then you see those pictures, those mites have had their legs chewed off or a piece of their carapace chewed off. One thing about mites is they have very little blood. So if they chop their leg off, it fairly quickly bleed out. They, of course, try to keep themselves covered under their shell, but the bees are biting their legs off. So this is the first trait that was noticed in the Russian bees. We call it grooming. When one of our bees got a mite on her, it might just crawl all over her, and she didn't care. She didn't seem to notice. But the Russian bees, when mite was crawling on her, she'd shimmy next to her and bump into one of her sisters in the hive. The sister would know that means, I got a mite. And the sister would comb around her body with her antenna and her mandibles and find the mite and bite it and drop it to the floor with its missing legs. So they're groomers. They groom mites off of each other. And that's a very important trait that confers varroa mite resistance. I'm just going to read these. I just put this together and I need to do it better. Traits that we know of, and then there could be traits that we don't even know of yet. But grooming was the first trait. Brood removal, so when the mite comes in on the body of a bee into your beehive, that's a pregnant female mite. All the mites you see, unless you don't cap a drone, they're pregnant female mites. That mite goes into the beehive, and when it gets near 8-day-old bee larvae, right before it spins its cocoon, it gets into the bottom of the cell. So it gets inside the cocoon with the larvae. And then it bites the bee and lays the eggs. When it bites the bee gives off an alarm signal, like, ouch, I'm being attacked. It's been capped, it's in the cocoon. But the sisters that are above in the cap, the other side of the capping, can smell the alarm. And they know that their sister is being attacked. They uncap her, and in some cases, throw her out, mite and all, and it stops the mites from reproducing. Very sensitive hygiene. Recapping. Turns out that in Apis cerana, the original host, if they smell that smell, the bee larvae is being attacked, they uncap it, and instead of throwing their sister and the mite out, they just leave it uncapped for a while, and the gases, the temperature seems to change enough that the varroa mite doesn't lay any eggs. She stops reproducing. So it's just uncapping and then recapping is another trait that seems to give the bees mite resistance. And it doesn't end up costing them very much, just the trouble of uncapping them, covering them over with wax. So far, what I was reading, nobody knows. But they guess that the gases, the humidity, the temperature, something changed enough. The varroa mite doesn't feel secure. She doesn't lay eggs. So, we can see this trait in bees right here in Texas very regularly in the summer and fall, and spring probably. So what they found was, oh wait, okay. Mite infertility, for some reason, some bees don't seem to have the nutritional makeup that mites need. They can't lay eggs. They become infertile. And so mite infertility seems to be a trait that is hard to reproduce. It's not been easy. It's a trait that stops mites. And then they talk about slow mite reproduction. Some bees have a body chemistry or whatever that slows down the mite's reproduction rate. And it turns out there's a variation in mite reproduction rate anyway that most of the world used to their advantage, that we can't use to our advantage here because of our use of miticides. I'll get to that in a minute. So some mites just naturally reproduce faster than others. So there's bees in my bag, and we find all these mites that are mangled at the bottom of the beehive. If you watch that, it's a picture of a bee grabbing a mite and biting it and killing it. Yeah, but I don't know how. I am not a computer person at all. I am a bee person, livestock, baby. I have a 2-month-old baby in my house. I love that. The computers, oh my gosh.
We're going to go the simple way. Oh, you're not going to hang on. Connecting to the network. Now,
Somebody knows how to do this.
there he goes.
This is real quick. So he's got a mite on the tip of that.
Hang on. No. It's going to your screen. I need to.
That's a picture of June plums in Jamaica. Those are June plums. They're not anything like a plum. They're huge trees with big pits, but they're very tart and delicious. That's in Jamaica, I'm sure. How did you find that picture?
It's the default on your background. Move it to this and oh, right there. Mirror. There he goes.
So that's a mite on the tip of a knife.
And I'm gonna play.
And he's found and he's trying to see what the bees do to him. That bee isn't interested in that bee.
Did you see that? That was quick. Look again. Look again right there. It's coming. There it goes. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so.
So mites beware, right? There is hope. Bees can live without us. And so these are bees that are kicking that mite out of bed with their sister, and they're just stopping the mite from reproducing for a sensitive hygiene. And so hopefully we keep incorporating a little bit of all these traits in our bees, right? The problem we have is that this is Apis cerana, different species of honeybee. That is an Apis cerana beehive. They almost never even wear veils or gloves. They seem to be very tame. The Langstroth Apis cerana beehive with supers would be about the size, about 6 to 8 inches long and wide. They're very small. It's a smaller bee. The bee is quite a bit smaller. Body type looks very similar, but they're just quite a bit smaller. And the important part, as far as varroa goes, is the time it takes for them to develop from larvae to pupae to adults. Apis cerana is a smaller bee. It takes less time. That gives the varroa mites less time because the varroa mites have to get in the cocoon right as it's being spun and reproduce before the bee emerges as an adult. So that's the time they have to reproduce. The founder's mite, the mom, the pregnant mom, goes in, gets inside the cocoon, and as soon as the cocoon is spun, she bites the bee larvae, or pupae at that point, and she sucks fat from it. She lays an egg, a little tiny egg, white mite comes out. It's her son, and she poops in a pile. Horses and donkeys do this sometimes. You go to a certain place to poop, make a little pile of dung. Well, the mites do that. And he goes to that pile, and he waits there, because then she lays an egg. After that, it'll be a female, and that female will go mate with her brother, and so they tend to be pretty inbred. They can outcross. If two founduses go into the same, that's the way they might outcross. They tend to just inbreed. And then that pregnant female daughter will suck blood from the bee and develop, and now she's already pregnant, but she has to get old enough just to get to her last growth spurt, and then she can come out and be a foundress and go lay her eggs somewhere else. And so the mite goes in, she lays a son, she may lay 2 or 3 or 4 daughters before the time is over, and she gets out. So 1 goes in, 3 come out. That's not too bad, but then when 3,000 go in and 9,000 come out, that's getting to be a problem, right? But in Apis cerana, it's not a problem. They don't have time. They only can breed in drones. Varroa mites cannot breed in Apis mellifera workers. And the thing about that is that there are drones. Very often, they make drones whenever there's a bunch of flowers moving, and they want to swarm. There's no flowers moving. They withdraw the drones. Mites have nowhere to go. There's no place to lay their eggs. They hang on the adult bees, but Apis cerana is very good at grooming. So the mite population just, and so when they can breed, they breed as fast as they can, because then they have to get to a period where they can and hope they can cling to survival, breeding as fast as they can when they can. However, once they got to Apis mellifera, or the bees we use, this is kind of an idea of how that works. First egg is male, the son, and daughters come after that, and then their brother. This just shows, I think I've repeated this. Mite going in, and then in the drone, quite a few coming out with the drone. The drone has the longest time it takes them to emerge, and so that's where they really breed the best. And because they come from Apis cerana where they can only breed in the drone, they're very attracted to drone. larvae. So that if you're looking for mites in your beehive, if you cap drone larvae, that's where your mites will be. And then you get to see them. But I spent a fair amount of time keeping bees in Jamaica, working with Jamaican beekeepers. In blue shirt in the back of that picture. My friend Quao Adams is lighting a smoker. Jamaicans noticed the same thing. They were keeping bees, catching a lot of bees in termite dens. Termites in Jamaica go up, build these like tunnels up the tree trunk. They build these big structures up in the tree branches that they live in, and they eat whatever they can out of the tree. And they always have a hollow space in the middle, and honeybees move into the hollow space. And that's perfect because now the bees are protecting the termites, and the termites are giving a home for the bees. And then the bees can swarm, and the termites can, because now the animals that eat the termites are afraid of the bees. So it makes a win-win for everybody. And the beekeepers then go and get their bees out of termite nests. And so, but when the mites came, the bees died for the most part. And then about 5 years later, I came along and I was advocating not using miticides. And so we're familiar with the terms of Rastafarian for Jamaicans. They have a history. When Jamaica banned slavery, there were a lot of slaves that had worked in sugar plantations that left the sugar plantations, but they didn't have any property. And there was a man from America, African-American man, that had made a lot of money. They had bought a big piece of property in the middle of Jamaica. And he said, you can go there. I can't build any infrastructure, but you can live there. And a lot of people did, and they formed what became the Rastafarians. And their principles were living with nature, being organic, not using pesticides, and no sugar. So they said instead of sugar, you can eat honey. So they became beekeepers in the communities. Eventually, the government of Jamaica decided they were becoming unruly or dangerous, and they raided the community and killed a bunch of them. They left and they kind of spread throughout Jamaica, and they just have their own lifestyle. It's a very unorganized. You call it a religion, but whatever it is. But a lot of them are beekeepers, and they're strictly organic. The government of Jamaica said, you have to use herbicide. It's against the law to not treat. You have to treat. And then the Rastafarian beekeepers told me, so I said, you shouldn't be treating. Yeah, that's right. They agreed with me. So I said, so what are you doing? So at a meeting, a bee meeting where they're not supposed to even admit what they're doing. Well, I mean, I can use that poison, man. No, I can use it. So we have to tell them, no, I don't have no bees, man. I don't have no bees. Because I can't use poison. So, how are your bees? They're fine, man. Bees are fine. Well, then, all the other bees said, wait a minute. The government's charging us $5 a beehive, forcing us to buy this stuff. It doesn't even work, because the problem is, we use it for long enough that it didn't work anymore. The mites have become resistant to fluvalinate, the active ingredient in apistate. And so it was totally worthless. And you're saying, the Rastafarians are saying they don't even need it? Their bees are better than our bees. So it changed, and then the government called me and Quao and said, what are you guys doing? And we got to have a meeting because you're telling them not to use. On my side, we have a law they have to use it. Turns out the brother-in-law of the prime minister sells it to the Department of Agriculture of Jamaica to sell to force the beekeepers to buy it. But So we have to have a meeting, so I'm fine with having a meeting. And I know exactly, I've been doing this for many years now. I know exactly that the mice become resistant to fluvalonate. You have to try something else, and then something else, and the mice keep getting resistant, and there is mite resistance, and you have beekeepers on the island that have bees that are mite resistant already, so they're fine. And we did have a meeting, and it occurred to me eventually to study Cuba because Cuba was very well documented. The island of Cuba hasn't had very good relations with the United States. They've tended to be organic, and so they never used any miticides in Cuba. And they took a huge hit. Their beekeeping industry was near 200,000 hives. They lost huge quantities of bees. It took about 5 years. They bred bees. Turns out that the bees with African origin had a natural mite resistance anyway, which we are taking advantage of here in Texas. We have bees that have some African genes mixed into them, and that's good for us. It really helps with a lot of things. And then the Cubans eventually got to where they had back to normal numbers, and they weren't doing any mite treatments. So the National Geographic Society and some university, I've forgotten, when studying the Cuban bees and the Cuban mites, two things happened. The Cuban bees had acquired numerous mite resistance traits, grooming, sensitive hygiene, those traits that we saw. The other thing that happened was the mites had slowed down their reproductive rate. Well, if you're a parasite, you want to kill your host. Where are you going to live? If you kill your host, you don't have anywhere to live. Termites cannot live anywhere but in a beehive. It's the only place they can live. They kill their host. Maybe they can spread to another one, but then they kill that host. Eventually, when they're that host, then they're dead. A good parasite wants a thriving host. Survival of the fittest does not mean the most competitive reproducer. It means the best cooperator with your host. The most cooperative mite is the one that's fittest for the bees. So the mites that slowed their reproductive rate down were better able to survive and reproduce in a thriving host. So what we need to do is we need to breed mites and we need to breed bees. And when we use miticides, we take mites that are very fast reproducers. Before they kill their host, we knock them down. Then they reproduce. Right before they kill their host, we knock them down. What we're doing is we're breeding mites that are miticide dependent. They depend on us to save them from killing their host without miticide. That to me is really a crazy way to go back. We should not be raising mites that need miticide, because they eventually become resistant to whatever miticide we use anyway. So then they're still doomed. We need to be raising bees that are disease mite resistant, and we need to be raising mites that are bee friendly. We can do that, but not if we keep using miticides. Miticides are actually holding us back from breeding the kind of mites that we need. We need to breed mites. And our bees here in Texas, the feral bees, are the wilds or the swarms, many of the swarms that you catch, that had nobody protecting them. When I came to Texas, I was told, if you get bees out of a water meter, they're guaranteed Africanized. You do not want, you should requeen without even looking at them, just requeen. You don't want those bees. So I got bees out of water meters. They're easy, they're fun. And I get paid to get them that. Instead of getting paid to buy these, I get paid to get them. And I kept them and they got bigger and bigger. And they never got mean. They were great bees. And they were not a problem. I never have treated bees for mites. I got to Texas in 2016. I've never treated bees. And there's bees that have survived the whole time. Now we have a moray hive in a property that never did anything but looking at it, never do anything to it. It's been going for 8 years. It's shutting down mites. And yet it's survived. So we have mite resistance here. We don't need miticides. And as soon as we can convince more and more people, and the government's working on it, they've come up with a whole line, POL, that's a pro-sensitive hygiene trait. They're trying to get commercial beekeepers to have faith in it. Last time I David talking to National Beekeeping, he was a bee research scientist for 5 years. Still, it's not retired yet. And he was saying, if you have 10,000 hives, pick 100, put them in a bee hive, and don't treat it, and breed from your survivors. The man next to me was 15,000 hives, so well, I should just kill 100 bees. 100 bee hives. Just assume that if you didn't treat them, they're all going to die. It becomes, at some point, a belief, and you can be trapped in your belief system. If we have these here, we don't need medicine. We need to, as soon as we spread them throughout and stop using medicine, we're going to mice that we need. But we're going to protect them, the overly virulent mice, with our medicine. A friend from France, he lives in France now. He was originally from America, and has a PhD in entomology in Ohio State, Dr. John Keefus. He raises bees in France now, has lived there many, many years. He was talking about raising, he pays people for mite-infested bees, because he needs mites to give to them, so he can test them, make sure they're mite resistant. He went to a Canadian beekeeper once and said, what is your miticide bill? Miticide bill was about $150,000 a year. Said, you don't need to spend all that money. Of course, the Canadian was not convinced. But he said, that's a lot. If you start, if you have a mite, you have 10,000 hives, $1 per hive adds up pretty quickly. Right? So it's a real problem. But they're really driven by fear. And by they, I mean the commercial pollinators. I have pollinated, I've worked for a polished broker in California, where we receive these and send them to the orchard and brought them back and sent them back. And it's a hard job. You have $300,000 field bills. You have huge expenses, and you have you're teetering with losses all the time. You're constantly worried. You take a 50% loss, that's huge. It literally puts you out of business very easily. So it's scary. And it's the fear that makes it difficult to let go of that, having total control and kill these mites. I understand it, but we as smaller scale beekeepers can show that we're getting there. And help people have faith in it. The U.S. government has been working on it, and there are many organizations working on mite resistance. And it does happen. You don't need miticides. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Will you apply the same principles to your arrival at the trucking and
Yes, I will. Now, I remember when the grower came, trichomite came before the grower. That was really easy. I didn't treat, had survivors, like half of them survived. Bred from the survivors, I never had any more trichomites. 1 year and it was done. Grower was not anywhere near that easy. AAA apps may also not be very easy. So we should be looking now for Apis mellifera resistant to AAA apps in Asia. And if we can find it, we should be bringing frozen semen. It's hard to import bees. If we could bring frozen semen from AAA apps resistant drones with Apis mellifera, we should be doing that so that we're ready when it gets here. I'm sure that they've been keeping bees, Apis mellifera in Asia for a long time with AAA apps, and it probably is AAA apps resistant. So that's a new mite that hasn't got here yet. It's begun to move out of Asia into Europe. And that's exactly what the Varroa did. Then it spread to Africa and South America. Came to America. We were waiting for it near the Mexican border, because it was in Mexico. And they had swarm traps. We killed the bees, checked them for mites, no mites. Checked them, killed all the bees, no mites. All of a sudden they appeared in Florida. Problem was they appeared in Florida in the winter when everybody was overwintering, to build up in Florida so they could go to the almonds. And we get quarantined, we're out of business because we have to get to the almonds. That's how they make their money. And if we get quarantined, we're out of business. And if there's mites here, we're going to get out of here before we get to mites. So they all moved. Turns out they already had the mites. They just spread across the United States fast. Many of you will go to Texas Beekeepers Association meetings or Central Texas Beekeepers meetings, and you will be told you're terrible if you don't treat for your mites. They will die. They will spread mites to our bees. Your bees don't have to die. You have to kill your bees. You can save them with poison. Treatments. Medicine. My old boss, I worked for Commercial Beekeeper for a few years. Then I quit and worked for the Department of Agriculture as a honeybee inspector. He used to call me and he used to feel like he was still my boss. And he said, Les, the mites are coming to New Mexico. We need to hold the line. We need to inspect all the bees that come in. You have nitrogen in. Euthanize those bees right then and there. And I said, and do we compensate the beekeeper? Oh, yeah, if we can. But we don't have the money. And I'm not the one that's going to decide that. I'm the boss. And I don't think we're going to try to exterminate the bees. They have money. It doesn't work. And then we found the mites in New Mexico, in his bees. They were the first bees that had it. So I called him up and said, do you still want to exterminate those bees? No, we need to medicate. We need to medicate. Okay. So that was, in those days, I just forgot it. And the other problem was that they made the valley oil soluble, so it wouldn't get in the honey. But you can buy the same active ingredient made water soluble with a detergent sticker for orchards for much cheaper. So instead of $5 a hive, it was literally 50 cents a hive. And if it was that cheap to double it up to make sure you don't get those mites, what the heck? So it just opened a whole can of worms. But then the mites became resistant to it. 9% doesn't work, doesn't kill the mites. So I like to talk about, let's say that you've been held captive, somebody put a hood over your head, threw you back in the pickup, dumped you around, stopped, got out and opened the tailgate, took the hood off, and you're in the desert. And he's got a backpack. He's got a gun, but it's in his holster. He's got a backpack. He points to a mountain and he says, see that green spot? It's not too far away. There's water there. And he gets in his pickup and drives away. You look in the backpack and he's got 2 quarts of water and some trail mix. Well, maybe he's on my side. It makes sense that green spot could be a spring with riparian vegetation. We have that in Mexico. So, how do you get there? You just stare at your goal and just march straight for it without wavering a bit. Problem is, you might step on a cactus or a rattlesnake, or right off the cliff. So you can watch your feet, make sure you never step on any cactus, rattlesnakes, but you don't know where you're going. So what do we need? We need both, right? We need long-term vision, wisdom, and the intelligence to carefully and surely make our way there. I feel like all this chemistry is a very intelligent way, very clever way to go in the wrong direction. How toxic do we want our world to be? When I worked for the commercial beekeeper, I treated 35,000 supers for wax pods with the chemical. I would stack 5 supers, paper towel, chemical, newspapers, 5 supers, without chemical newspapers. All week for weeks, that's all I did. 35,000 supers. Fill this room and more, up towards the ceiling. I came out of there, and my breath smelled of that chemical for hours. I cleaned up around the barrel, there's a skull and crossbones up there. So I asked my boss, what's this skull and crossbones about? Oh, them blank environmentalists says it causes cancer. It won't hurt you, man. They say everything causes cancer. It's ethylene dibromide. It's very carcinogenic. It finally got banned while I worked for them. And they put it in the news. It was banned, and they banned it for everybody except beekeepers. And the beekeepers, they put that in the news. The beekeepers were furious that they put that in the news. And one guy told me, you know, you think honey, they think it's something kind of pure. You hear about that, they're going to think it ain't pure. Well, if it's got that thing that bromide in it, it isn't pure. Many years later, I wound up with stage 3 melanoma. I was told in 2016 that once I had melanoma in lymph nodes in my neck, once it gets to the lymph, there's nothing we can do. You need hospice. It's going to be back in 6 months, at the most a year. So I said, okay. So I didn't go back because he said there was nothing more they could do. So I figured, why didn't go to appointments? They're not going to do anything. They're doom and gloom. And so then my eyes started hurting quite a bit. And then all the cancer had been over here. I got 2 surgeries and radiation. So my eyes started hurting a lot. I got where it was hard to drive. So I got insurance because I kept going in and out of insurance. It's so complicated and expensive when you're self-employed or whatever. So then I had insurance and I called the oncologist because that's the only doctor I knew in Texas. He said, yeah, it's real comfort to go to your eye and your brain. Thanks, God. I'm so uplifted. Get a scan, come in and see me. So I got a scan. So in this waiting room where he's, where he examines you. He comes in with that little book that in his hand. I'm like, what is he doing with that book? But I don't get it. He said, I just read your book and I really like your attitude. Okay. Are you interested in keeping bees? Yeah, my uncle used to keep bees. There's property in Dripping Springs, by the way, where he'd like to keep some bees. Okay, how was my scan? I'm thinking, it's coming back, it's going to my brain. Oh, you're clean as a whistle. And now it's fast. And now, if you're a year and a half post-treatment, you're in a whole different demographic. Okay. Well, when we were talking about bees, I have not been back since. It's been 8 years, 2016. So, we know there's an element of bee venom. There's a given that's good against melanoma cancer. Specifically melanoma. Well, maybe I get my occasional dose. I don't get very much. I don't get stung a lot, but probably at least once a week. So.
And when you ask them more detail,
You do get kind of used to that. I don't like it. Okay.
I'm going to tell you a funny story about last summer. We got first before we went for open air hive. house. And he was wearing that, he used to be a fire chief in New Mexico, and he was wearing those overalls, like really mechanical overalls. They were a little short for him too, and gaping in, on the legs and on the arms. And so he went with that in the veil, and we got through, and midway, I see him doing the bees, and he's doing his thing, and then he says, I have a bee in my nose. And it's like, and then when he hit his ear, and he kept going, never moved, never did anything. I was like, oh my gosh.
I had the misfortune in Mexico. There's a lot of bears. We're going to get them. They're coming. They're in Texas at the edges now. They're coming up from Mexico, coming in from New Mexico, coming in from Louisiana. Bears are a big problem for beekeepers. Electric fences work. Solar charged electric fences. There's a bottom layer 4 to 6 inches above the ground. You want to be too far. The bears come with their nose down low, and if they don't get him on the nose, he won't care. So you got to get him on the nose. At any rate, one bear decided he didn't care about my electric fence. He ran made 2 beehives, just next night 2 more. So I short up the electric fence and 2 chargers, and still got it. He got more. So I went to give him fish, and they said, we don't want to issue a kill permit because it costs our office too much money and a bunch of paperwork. Please, hurry, they're disappeared. So I have a sheet, I know where it's going to be tonight. I went and set up my 30-on-6. Those have been a big mountain near Dallas. And I put bells on the fence. Or my pickup in front of it, so that when I turn it outside, it shines bright and bees. Kind of almost fell asleep at 2 a.m. Bell rings. Oh, turn the lights, pull up the kind of sun. There, ripped the top off the beehive, started raking in the honey. His fingertips was rude. You see white juice dripping out. I was started looking at him through the sights of the rifle. And I realized I was about 30 feet from him. I was setting in from 30 yards to 100 yards. Kind of shoot low. My heart's beating pretty fast. He turns to look at me and fruit juice drizzling out of his mouth. But what he was doing while he was eating was rubbing his eyes. He was snorting. Because they have an instinct. They know where to get you where it hurts. So they're stinging him in his eyelids, in his eyes. They were crawling in his nose and stinging him in his nostrils. And he didn't care, he just snorted and go right back to eating until he was full. And then he turned to look at me, and I could swear I heard a voice saying, I'm not afraid to kill you. I'm not afraid to die either. I aimed a little bit low and pulled the trigger. It's a story behind it that that's when I realized that bees really know where to go. Like if you do this in your orchard when you got upset bees, they will sting your hand like that because it looks like an eye or a nostril. And that's their prime target. Feel free to ask questions. Be prepared when you propose not to choose. Some beekeepers think that's a terrible idea.
Make sure to ask your questions. Mike has
So that's several years ago, I heard someone say, if your bees cannot handle the mites win, those bees didn't deserve to live. And that's an extreme mentality. But I think it really supports what you're trying to share with us, is the fact that don't make them weak. They can either handle the mites or they can't. And to that end, I'm just double checking that's still the message.
And so that can be called Darwinian beekeeping, or bond, living that diet, James Bond. And it seems cruel that you lose bees all the time anyway. Bees never was a guarantee. I liken bees to a 2-stroke motor, like a chainsaw that's a little bit iffy. Whereas a 4-stroke motor, so bees need revved up, or they die for a number of reasons. And that's another thing to bring up is that San Antonio, Texas, beekeepers lost some bees during their mosquito spray. And the beekeepers complained to the city. City said, went to the manufacturers.
So it helps if you level the hives,
Sorry.
especially
I'm sorry.
side to side, not
I
so much
did
front.
Something wrong. There you go.
The beekeepers went to the city went to the manufacturer of the pesticide that they had used to kill the mosquitoes. The manufacturer said, what was the beekeeper's mite counts? Oh, you want to blame it on the mites, but it was your spray that killed the mosquitoes. But that's a common tactic. Oh, if you don't treat the mites, they're gonna die, and it isn't the pesticides. We are awash with pesticides. How many more pesticides do we need in the world? You can ask a Buddhist, a Baptist, Muslim, a Methodist, a Mennonite, how much more toxicity do we need in the world? There we all agree. This to me says how much more poison do we need in the world?
I totally agree with you, but that's why I started off being not to be beekeeper or really so and I'm successful and I love it and what I get to really it goes the whole strategy behind it is very simple and very cheap. You don't do it, you got a lot of way to go. And now that cultivation of that feral, those feral bees mixed in with my other natural, and I can see where they're thriving. I can see somewhere there are weaknesses. I'm observing. I'm very watchful, and I'm learning. And I get that it works, and I feel good about what I'm doing. I'm also organic farming because I live off my land, I grow things, everything I can, because I'm very conscious of what I put in my body, because I know about all the stuff, the dangers, the pesticides, the poisons that you're being fed and how being told. Then you come across it with other groups and forums and whatnot. And I've been reading a lot of people actually searching for what I have been fortunate enough to find. They're searching. And then immediately been jumped upon by these guerrillas that say, you must be, you're evil, all the things you said. And it hurts my heart. And it's like, I want to be a megaphone, but at the same time, they just kind of start cheap cutting it down.
Yeah.
So what's your, how do we bring more people into the fold? What's your help combat that big energy thing? It comes from the commercial beekeepers that have infiltrated everyone else.
Well, I've been doing this for 50 plus years. And like when I was against my antibiotics, people thought I was communist or hippie or something. And now even USDA says you shouldn't be using antibiotics. But that took 30 years. And so compared to when I was a kid, I didn't know anybody that would be treatment free. And then I wrote an article in the American Bee Journal that published, and I got ringed out. People told me all kinds of things. And then one man in Vermont wrote a letter in support of Kurt Webster. He's still keeping bees. He's still in Queens in Vermont. And then I knew two people in the United States. And then I met Sam Comfort. And
Was here last month?
yeah, and we've made some different groups. Little by little, it's spreading. It's much better than it used to be. When I first started keeping bees, the Mexico beekeepers was all white men. Period. 100%. If that woman was there, she was a beekeeper's keeper.
That's right.
She was not a beekeeper. And in about the 80s, that started to change. And when women came into beekeeping, they brought in a whole different perspective. It was more inclined towards Let's not put poison in a beehive. So we will overcome. We will take over the world, but it's going to take a while. And I've talked to, like I talked in Texas and at the Oxford, England Beekeepers Association in London. They said we're conservative. In Texas, it was Texas Beekeepers Association, and the bee inspector, Mark
Diet.
was there at the time. They said, that's what you're saying is very dangerous. They said, I think that using poison to kill mites is very dangerous. And everybody agrees with the long-term vision. And I think it's time to say, if you don't look for alternatives to poisons, you won't find them. If you look, you might take a while finding them, but you won't find them if you don't look. Yeah, I believe if you look, you will find them. And we have found them. The bees have found them. We didn't find them. The bees can take care of themselves. We just need to get out of the way. And that will eventually overcome. But I don't know.
There's talking points, like to Lesa's point, if you keep trading, you're really not letting the bees kind of do their thing, and you're getting in the way of them. But mostly I would say, know your bee biology, understand the whole concept of breeding for survival, which is the ultimate selection tool, right? Those mite counts, they are giving you some data, but not a lot of it is usable. But beyond that, it doesn't matter if they have mites or not, as long as they're thriving. What you want is the animal survival. You are looking at the colony level, not just at the bee level. And as long as you focus on that, you educate yourself, get credentials, increase your number of colonies, increase your years of beekeeping. There's not much you can do to speed it up, but you can increase your number of bees and get the credentials. Master beekeeper stuff really helps. All of a sudden, people are respecting what you say a little bit more. And above all, don't go in with a fight. Just go and listen to them and say, okay, well, I agree with this, but ultimately, this is what we're looking for. As long as you don't say your way is the wrong way, but this is what I think makes sense, and it does to everybody. Survival of the fittest in the long run is the most sustainable approach, right? Then you win the battle, and you can keep saying those things, and you can just keep, spreading the word that way. And then once you reach a level where you're comfortable enough, you can educate others and to do the same thing, right? Your biggest credential is your level of success with your own bees. And you cannot get there if you don't understand bee biology, if you don't understand pest management, if you don't understand the science behind it. So educate yourself before anything else. Find the research that support what you're talking about and use it wisely to demonstrate specific points that you're making. If you look at what people are talking about, especially on social media and all that stuff, the same points always come back. It's very rare after a while when you've learned to debate. It's okay to have discussions. You might not win today, and it's not necessarily a matter of winning, but you might not have, what you need to make a good argument, but you're learning from them. You're gathering what their arguments are. Now you're making sense. It helps you grow as a beekeeper, by the way, and kind of like have a more holistic, more integrated understanding of what's going on. And then you can process that and regurgitate it in a way that's going to preemptively address any of those arguments. Like, well, it's like you would put flea medicine on your dog. Well, a dog is a mammal. It's a completely, first of all, I don't put flea medicine on my dogs because it's poison. I don't want that on them. And fleas are not going to kill the dog anyway, right? So there's all kinds of arguments that you're going to need to process. It's not animal cruelty to not treat. It's not any of that stuff. As long as your bees, by the way, are having similar or sometimes even higher survival rates because you're using resilient, fit stock. They're scrappers, they're strong, they're doing their thing. They're, by the way, leveraging millions of years of alleles, special, genetic tools that they can use to activate when the time comes to go against the varroa mites or the upcoming threat of tropilolaps or anything. Look, over those millions of years, they've seen it all, basically. They have in the reservoir of tools, they're not necessarily activated now, but as the pressure comes in, that activates those tools. All of that is right there for them to use. It's not about evolution. That's another argument that people will use. Oh, it takes millions of years for evolution to do its work. It's about natural selection. Don't let it take you down the evolution path. It has nothing to do with evolution. Evolution has been happening, and it will continue to happen. It's about natural selection. When nature selects, it selects for the strongest, the fittest, the ones that are going to survive on their own, the scrappers. That's what the bees are using. That's what we're using as treatment-free beekeepers. We're selecting from the survivors, and the ones that don't survive, maybe they have no business surviving. In the grand scheme of things, honeybee colonies in the wild have about 20% survival rate in their first year. And then after that, once they're established after first winter, it goes up to the 80+%, in 90+%. So established already does better. And if it was true that if you don't treat your bees, they will die, you would not have, according to research, 2 to 3 times more wild bees than you have managed bees. How are those bees surviving? They went through the gauntlet of natural selection and the pressure of the mites, found ways to get around it, and then bred from that. And they reestablished, yes, initially they crashed, but that's not the case anymore, not in the United States. Australia's gonna go through that. Sorry, I get on my soapbox.
I just want to mention real quickly, Dr. Eric Musson, who has passed away, was in charge of the University of California at Davis, maybe research. Yes, he could direct funding for most research projects. And I would be calmly sitting with him where he would say, these people that don't treat, they're just bee havers, they're killing it, and he was angry. And I said, no, we have bees that are mite resistant, there is mite resistance. And he would just get furious. And then Tom Seeley was a bee research scientist in Cornell University in New York.
We have a book in the library,
Yeah, that
Honeybee Democracy. Not for tonight, this is actually Stephanie's, but we will have it.
It's fine, that's who you're talking about.
Yeah, Tom Seeley had bees in a forest and trees, wild bees. And they disappeared when the bromide came. They slowly got back, and so they were reoccupied. And then they've been reoccupied for 8, 9, 10, 12 years. And he wrote about it. And I mentioned that to Dr. Musson, because I don't have a PhD, but Tom Seeley has a PhD. He said, well, maybe in some isolated New York forest somewhere, there might be mite-resistant bees, but for the most part, we have to treat. And you realize that it really is a deep-seated belief system, and they get angry. And you getting angry at them, I feel that temptation, like, you're stupid, you just try it, it'll work. But anger doesn't help anything. Because they're afraid. Anger always comes from fear. And they're afraid of losing bees or looking stupid or whatever it is. So we will overcome, because nature doesn't want us to poison ourselves. There is no them, there's only us here on earth. We can't put poison over there on them.
Rachel has a question.
You have a question. You mentioned before that juniper oil from in your smoke, when you're smoking.
Sorry, I'm laughing because that keeps on counting you.
Is because that's what I use in my smoker because it's all over my property, so it's the easiest thing to grab. You said it doesn't hurt the bees, correct? Or it doesn't bother them too much. I'm not.
Yes, she's talking about the.
Does juniper or cedar oil, like, it kills mice, does it hurt the bees? And so, I don't remember the year, but there was a bee research scientist in Western Texas, Dr. Frank Eischen, and he was told by Mexican beekeepers, the creosote bush in the smoker, you can burn the creosote bush's leaves when they're wet because they're just so full of resin, they're almost never wet, so to speak. And they noticed that it was killing the mites. So he tested it. He found that it was micidal, and it didn't seem to affect the longevity of the bees. And overtly. He didn't do long, in-depth tests. He wrote about it, and then the makers of Apistan ringed him out for writing about it. You're advocating a, herbal concoction that might be very dangerous, and only our product is approved for removal of mites in the bees. And so I invited him to New Mexico to talk to our group. I liked his research. And he had tested a number of plant materials. We gave him cedar bark to test. And he tested it. It was very hard on the mites and easy on the bees. So, it's not good for the bees. Too much any kind of smoke isn't good for any of us. But it did have miticidal properties. But I don't use it as a miticide. I don't need any miticides. Because I wrote that in my book, and then people call me from New York and say, where can we get creosote bush? Well, you don't need anything. We have some comfort, keeping bees without miticides. You can get mite-resistant bees. And I wouldn't send them our bees because these bees are not used to the winters to have them in. But we all can. And then by using Russian bees are very mite resistant. You don't need to worry about the mites. If you say smoker feel there's nothing wrong with it, but you don't need it for the miticide. Mites are not an enemy. We have to live with them. You can't kill them. Try.
So let's talk a minute about treatments. Don't have to be chemicals or poisons you're putting in your beehive. It could be anything that has a miticidal effect. Anything that you do, even interventions. We were talking about drone broods earlier. Some people pull their drone brood as a as a treatment to reduce the population of mites. Others are forcing brood breaks to reduce the population of mites because they need the brood to reproduce. So if they don't have brood, then there's a break in the mite reproduction cycle as well, right? Anything that we beekeepers do in order to artificially decrease the population of mites is aimed at cropping up genetics that are actually unfit. And we're actually putting the selective pressure on the mites themselves to get stronger, to find other mechanisms. Maybe they might decide to jump more from drone to workers, or they might develop other strategies to get stronger and more virulent because we're putting the pressure on them. So anything that we do to reduce the number of mites is considered a treatment that's counterproductive to the sustainability long-term of the honeybee population. Because unless they're doing it themselves and finding mechanisms themselves, then if we're not there anymore, what do they do about it? They're going to crash if they're relying on us too, right? So keep that in mind. It's not just about the chemicals. It's about organic acids that are extremely caustic. And by the way, natural organic doesn't mean innocuous, right? DDT was organic. Naphthalene is organic. As long as it's got a carbon atom, it is organic. It doesn't mean it's not poisonous, right? Essential oils that actually meld within your beeswax and contaminate that, which, by the way, they have a strong smell. What do bees use to communicate the smell? Pheromones, right? So you're interfering with that and you're potentially poisoning their brood nest where they raise their babies or their food, right? So just be mindful of anything that we do to a colony of bees might have unintended consequences, and that's what you want to keep in mind. Melanie?
What about requeening with the Russian?
Absolutely. So requeening with genetics that are resilient and fit is a great way. Russians, locally adapted survival stock.
That's the key. Because when you requeen, then you're saying this isn't working. This is something that will work in the long run. The one thing to point out here is that in Texas we have 2 opportunities for natural brood breaks. August, it gets too hot. The bees often quit raising brood. And then right about now or earlier, bees quit raising brood. So we have 2 brood breaks here. And there's another trait that our bees are real good at. Some bees just plod along and make brood all the time. The Italians are famous for that. And in Italy, it came in handy. But our slightly Africanized bees here will make brood breaks, and that stops. If the mite population rises in the brood rate, it drops. So it's a good trait.
But requeening doesn't have to be purchased bees necessarily. It could also be letting the bees replace their own queen, letting them get swarmy and get that the new genetics to go mate with 15 drones in the area. Purchase queens, you have to know that to a certain extent, if you don't have any other solution, that's a quick fix. But you don't always know what you're getting, and it's not always successful. Plus, grafted queens, the ones that you purchase from queen producers, are usually of inferior qualities as what the bees can do themselves, right? So keep that in mind. It's not trivial, and it's not always successful. Allowing them to kind of swarm or split them, that's one good way to get new genetics rolled into your colony. Or here's another option. Let's say you have a colony of Italian treated genetics, completely unfit. If you don't feed them and treat them, those are probably going to crash at a very high rate, right? What you can do is first of all, you could let them requeen themselves. You're already diluting those genetics. Otherwise, if you have good resilient genetics, take a frame of eggs and young brood, put it in there, take away their queen in any other way that they have than that frame to make genetics. You're basically completely replacing the genetics there, right? So there's plenty of different ways. But yes, letting them go through their cycles and their natural bee biology to kind of replenish and rejuvenate those genetics will be already a great way to get there. Rachel?
So what's the life cycle of the Veramite?
Yeah.
Like in the winter, if they
What is the life cycle of Veramite? How long do they stay in dispersal mode, or what's their cycles?
I know they can stay, I think I read 3 months without any brood. They can live frenetic in the dispersal stage, just waiting for the brood to come along. But if you're in a hive with big brooders, you've got to wait, stuck in there with people trying to keep you off. The little video we saw, the bee running their mite, those mice that have to wait out in the open, sweating that day. So that's when the mite population drops dramatically when they stop raising brood. And it's brood that raises mites. When we're raising bees, we're raising mites. We just need to remember so we do our best to help the bees with their resistance and tolerance. But then we also should be trying to actively breed mites. And we should get research involved in that. The problem with research, egg science is generally, we have egg science, kids saying them, but then Monsanto or Bayer come to them and say, we're going to donate $13 million to build a facility for you. We're going to sponsor $10 million a year in research, but they own research. And they can then encourage or discourage what gets research. So we can't have to buck that. Yeah, it's a serious problem. But we can buck it, and it's being bucked because, for instance, they found that a wasp, it's about that big, 1.5 millimeters in Washington State. It loves to lay its eggs in fruit flies, and they cannot spray their cherries enough to keep the fruit flies from ruining the crop. And the wasp works. It's like one wasp makes 6, it just expansion. So we'll get to where we're going to raise fruit flies in the ocean to feed the wasps, to then protect the trees. We're going to get there. We're going to find ways to eat almonds and cherries and all kinds of good food and not kill any pollinators. Because you kill pollinators, you kill birds, you kill fish, you kill people.
Okay, so we have a little bit more time for some questions, but for now, I want to make sure that you stay for the door prizes and some housekeeping things. I want to thank you all for your questions, but above all, I want to thank Les Crowder tonight. Thank you, Les. So we have the door prizes to do. Anytime you come to a meeting, feel free to bring anything you want to give. Beekeeping books that you no longer want or that you want to donate, gloves, hive tools, anything that you think might be related somewhat to beekeeping in any way. And then we'll do the door prizes. The more we have door prizes, the more it's fun for everybody. So stick along with that. We also, that landing library, we're going to reconstitute. So if there's any books that you would like to donate to the landing library, we're going to start by rebuilding it with the books on the list of the Master Beekeeper program, and probably a lot of the Thomas Seeley books that are really interesting. Of course, there will be Les Crowder's book, and this is Stephanie's copy, but if she's okay with that, I'm happy to pass it around, right, so you can kind of take a look. And other than that, this is kind of the format of our meetings every month. Next week, I can do this every week. Thank you very much. Next month, we'll have Steve Butler again. That's a don't miss kind of a thing. Stephanie and Kara both caught a bunch of swarms that are freebies, and they're usually, if you're lucky to get locally adapted survivor stock, really the best bees that you can get, because they fit the local cycles of weather pattern in your area, and they're used to thriving on their own. You might catch some that are escaped from a treated, apiary, but that's okay. You can see what they do for a while, and then if they don't do well, then you can fix it. Yes, Elizabeth? Where were those swarms caught? Where, so Stephanie, you're like right off of Darden Hill?
I live in Dripping Springs, Garden Hill, and Sawyer Ranch Road, and I have a creek. If you have a live creek, if you have water, well, it was in February, March, April, I caught the swarm. On the day we had that eclipse, that's when my swarm moved in. So I call it my eclipse swarm, and it lives up to its reputation, absolutely. So my lessons learned from making my own swarm trap and hanging 4 on my property. I have 10 acres. The one that was nearest the creek, where the springs are constantly active, and in quite proximity to the water, like 2.5 feet. Know that when you do that, you have to use ladders. Your ground needs to be kind of stable, because when you're going to retrieve your swarm down, if you've never done it before, and I learned with Les's help, to then carry my trap up a steep hill, because my property's cliff side, and the water's low, obviously, and my apiary is at the top in the wildflower meadow. So doing that and moving bees at sunset, the first load of bees, but then the trick is you put the trap back. And I said, why do I need to do this, Les? You reload. Well, you're doing that because you've waited as long as you could. The daylight's, waning. You're taking the majority of the bees, putting them in your hive. You've got the queen, good. Okay, so those bees are happy. They're staying. We hope. They may not, but they did. Thank God. And then you put the trap back in the same position, same place, and then throughout, after sunset and beyond, all your field bees, your foragers, come back. And then the next day, I waited until after dark and went down and claimed my trap again, and I was just astounded at the number of bees on the second pull, basically, right? And I went, oh my God. So I took those to the hive, and I asked Les, how many times do I do this? And he said, well, you can keep going, but most people, yeah. So I did it, I actually did it for 5 days, because, I was a newbie and wanted to see, and each time I still got more and more foragers, and I was just like, unbelievable. So I am going to set a trap, and they do tend to possibly revisit that location, so that's exactly what I'm doing. Middle of February, I'm putting one there for sure.
And how many swarm traps did you and I put together?
4. I did 4 and I caught 1, and you did?
I did 2 and I caught 1. Same day, same eclipse. I also have a pond.
In a different location.
Yeah, I'm in Buda, so kind of like an abandoned, like a tree that kind of looked like it was not doing too well. And I also want to say that if we want to have a slum gum party, I learned how to slum gum with these ladies, and it's like, stir the pot, paint the pot. It's a whole.
Who doesn't know what slum gum means? Okay, explain.
Okay, slum gum, you take all the old comb, you get all of the wax out of old hives, so you need an experienced beekeeper that's got resources.
If you're new.
If you're new, or if you're not new, gather all your resources from your freezer, and you put it in a pot on an induction burner, hopefully outside, because it's quite fragrant.
Yeah.
You pour some water in, stir, 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 and then you use a paintbrush, paint the inside of your pulp pot or whatever you're using.
What's the rationale?
And the rationale is that you're attracting the queen because of the aromatics, right? It's quite fragrant and it smells like old comb, old beeswax, old comb, yeah. And it's aromatherapy along with, you know, witchcraft kind of. But it's fun. We could do a slum gum party together, maybe, if you want to get started. That's how these ladies got me started. I started with swarm trapping, and that's how I became a beekeeper.
Would anybody want to do that?
And by the way, we do that in the workshop in March. So if you're interested in that, oh, I can scream my way through this one. Yes, Deirdre.
And it was like
Like a new box like that.
small version of the leaf house, so the style that we want, that's basically, that's made for both the hardware and the small pony that will be hosted in the box like this.
Can you slum gut that?
Absolutely,
Make
yes.
that a.
Yes,
And you put an old comb in the middle.
we're gonna talk.
In February, which will be plenty of time to get ready for the swarm season, which happens about, you know, March-ish, March, April-ish, maybe May. And so we'll teach you how to do that. And Steve Butler's job is to really give us some tips and answers on that. Absolutely. We can answer more questions, but in the meantime, we're going to do door prizes, and I'm going to let Stephanie kind of, we put all the tickets in there. So who doesn't have a ticket? Everybody has a ticket? Elizabeth doesn't have a ticket. Do you want to, Karen, do you want to give her a ticket? We'll put it in the box. Anybody else doesn't have a ticket? A little raffle ticket. And then an innocent hand, which is going to be Stephanie's hand, is going to go and look at, you want to talk about the door prizes today? Okay.
Okay, so we just have some fun beef door prizes, 2 kitchen towels, and what we'll do is just pick a number and you can come pick. So obviously the first number is going to have their choice. There are those, there's some stickers. These are soaps that are absolutely delicious, and some new travel mesh to, if you're buying bees, and they come in a new box and you need to transport them. I use these all the time, and it helps prevent the bees from flying in your cavity if you don't have a pickup truck, which I don't. Natalie, what is this?
This is a small hive beetle entrance, basically mechanical barrier for Langstroth hives. So that prevents them from being able to get into the hive. And that's a mechanical barrier from the integrated pest management. That's the mechanical level of intervention, which doesn't involve any kind of like, it's a passive way to block them out, right? So if you have a Langstroth, that's something you could potentially use. And anything else on the table is mine, don't take it. Do you want to do it?
Right on the back.
Laura M.
Oh, do you have a number?
62.
62, Laura! Woo! First pick of the call! What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be?
5 8, 5 7 8, 5 8, 4 8, 4 8.
It is me! You know the reason why? Because I wanted that soap. I don't know if you've seen, but smelled it, but it smells delicious. So I know I shouldn't as a board member.
We
but
have a
Am I
source.
entitled to, or maybe
We have a source.
Okay. Then I'll pass my ticket to somebody else.
Okay.
Thank you.
4 5 4. Ending in 5 4.
Woo!
Ending in 6 0.
Very good, awesome. 6-0.
578.
Melanie.
Melanie.
Karen, second, your turn next.
Guinea 47.
47, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. All right. Some of those.
What you gonna do? Stickers, towel, the back.
Getting in 57.
Woo, Deborah!
Three things left. 5-2.
You were going over.
5-2.
5-2.
Anyone 5-2? That's over there. Come on
Curtis,
in.
come pick your door prize. Getting in 5-5.
All right, you got me.
And last one, 5-6. Our last lucky winner. Yay, that was fun. Are we giving anything else away?
So I think it's 8 o'clock. And Natalie's busy, so I'm just gonna take over.
See, I told you, Karen, you got it.
If you are interested in, if you're interested in looking at any of the books or want to mingle or chat with Les before he runs away.
And before we're over, I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, thank you to Kara and Stephanie for organizing the door prizes, the signing table, the announcements, for the upcoming events and all that stuff. But now I'm gonna let Mike, the past vice president, talk about t-shirts.
All right, thank you. This will be very quick. Part of the 2024 board, when I took over, I noticed that we had this perks sheet.